Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Tech for Good show. You'd think I'd get better at starting that, wouldn't you? I pushed out the card too late. We went live, and then we went to the card, and then we came live again. Someday I'll get it right, Chris. Someday I'll get it right. Hi, everyone.
You need to program a macro. Sorry. So you need to program a macro where you hit the button and it does it all for you.
This is true. This is true. Anyway, welcome everybody to the Tech for Good live show. It is Tuesday. It is March 2nd. It is 5 p.m. CET. It's 4 p.m. UK. It is 11 a.m. East Coast US and 8 a.m. Pacific. If it's not that time or day wherever you are, you might be watching a recording. If it is that time, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tom Raftery. I'm a Global VP, Innovation Evangelist and Futurist for SAP. And I have with me my co-host, Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Chris Kernaghan. I am a inveterate technology lover, and I am a SAP consultant working for a global SI and an SAP mentor. So thank you for being here and coming to listen to this.
Okay, we've got our first comment in. Woo!
Yes. Oh, somebody in Russia.
There we go. I think that's Anton Boyam.
It is.
So, yep. Hi, Anton. Good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. Okay, we have some cool stories for you this week, and we start off with space. The final frontier, to coin a phrase. So I came across this cool story in a UK tabloid. So the which shall remain unnamed. So the source, you might want to take it with a bucket of salt, but it really looks interesting, and they're referencing the Orbit Assembly Corporation and people like that who are actual companies, and they're talking about the world's first space hotel to begin construction in low Earth orbit in 2025, complete with restaurants, cinemas, and rooms for up to 400 guests. I mean, this is right out of science fiction. Now, they said to begin construction in 2025. That means, first guests on board, realistically, if it does happen, wouldn't be until 2030, honestly. And, when it costs, what is it now? Is it $2,000 now per kilo to get stuff into space?
Yep, that's around about then. And SpaceX is still bringing that down.
Yeah, but even if it's, $500 per kilo, how many kilos are you going to need to get up to get a full massive space station like that?
Never mind that. I would need to go on a serious diet for that. That is an incentive for a diet if ever I heard one.
There you go. So, buy them lottery tickets, Chris. Buy them lottery tickets. But it's an interesting article because, it goes through things like, you can see in the picture there, it's a big circular construction. And obviously the idea of that is that it's spinning so that it creates artificial gravity. And they say they'll be creating an artificial gravity roughly that of the moon, so 1/6 of the gravity here on Earth. And they said they will be capable of creating a Martian type gravity. So that's about 1/4 or so, or 1/3 of the Earth's gravity. So, and they will have hotels, they'll have cinemas. They liken it in the article to a kind of a cruise ship, which, given the issues with cruise ships and pollution and stuff, you kind of, and COVID and stuff, you kind of wonder. But still, it's space, man, and it's space tourism, and it looks like it. It looks like this article that they think it's going ahead. And you can see on the picture there, those kind of things sticking out of the outer edge of the rim are little kind of rockets as well to take off and bring people back to Earth. That's just insane, isn't it?
It is, and it is insanely cool. We talked before we came on. I find it interesting because of the potential for the overview effect. That thing that astronauts and people have that sort of makes them feel more holistic and closer to humanity, and see how everything's connected and that sort of stuff. And I think that they've brought it as a beneficial effect. And I thought that, the first thing whenever I saw that was, that looks really cool. And then I thought about the overview effect and what that would mean for those people who are traveling, because let's face it, those people are going to be, at the start quite wealthy, influential, and people like that. And maybe it might turn some of them away from being, quite so greedy to being a bit more humanitarian. And that would be a large benefit. But just the very idea that, I could, or even my kids could go on holiday to space, or
I know, right?
Blows my mind.
I know. Victor Martinez is saying in the comments, Buenas tardes, Victor. Time to start the diet again. Yeah. So, Chris, question for you. If someone handed you a free ticket to this space hotel, what would you do? Just
one ticket, or
okay? Let's say you've got a pair of tickets, so you could take the wife.
Oh, I would absolutely go. I'd
snap their arms off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd be on the next.
I would update my will in advance. I'm just saying, I would update my will in advance. But no, I absolutely would go. You wouldn't be able to stop me. 15 sunrises, 15 sunsets every day. Yeah, I'll do that.
I just love to experience lower G. Just that'd be amazing.
Do the vomit comet, the parabolic flight. That would be awesome.
That'd be amazing too. It would, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And wasn't that what they took Stephen Hawking on?
Yes, the vomit comet. Yes.
Wow, that was stunning. The pictures of his face on that are just amazing. He's just so happy. Phenomenal.
Absolutely. We'll
move on. There's some interesting stories, as always, every week in transportation. Yes. It's amazing. I keep talking about the case megatrends, the big four trends that are disrupting automotive. Yep. Every week there are new stories from this sector. It's phenomenal. So the first one, this huge study from Transport and Environment, where they measured the implications of electric cars versus internal combustion engines in terms of raw materials. Because whenever there's a discussion about EVs, you always have someone coming along saying, but what about the raw materials that it takes to make an EV? And people say that because they've heard it somewhere and they think it makes them sound smart, and there aren't a lot of studies out there. And, there aren't a lot of studies out there. This is the first in-depth study I've come across which measures the raw material use of an EV and directly compares it to the raw material use of an internal combustion engine vehicle. And it shows definitively that an internal combustion engine vehicle over its lifetime uses around 17,000 litres of petrol/diesel, which is, I don't know how many thousand barrels high, versus 30 kilos of raw materials for an EV. And those 30 kilos are highly recyclable. Whereas obviously the fossil fuels going into the internal combustion engine vehicles are not. So that's a brilliant study. Transport and Environment is the place to look for that. And you see Marta saying hi as well from Madrid. Hola Marta, ¿qué tal?
I picked that up actually on The Guardian. So there's it has been picked up on other publications. But it's this. As you say, this is the first large scale study that I've seen as well, and it really does just put it into perspective. That whole end-to-end supply chain, from cradle through to grave, and what the raw material and polluted or the pollution outcomes actually are. And one of the things I was interested was just to see how the battery materials actually cope over time. And that's broken out as well. And that was interesting in its own right, because we have talked before about the evolution or the longevity of batteries going from electric vehicles out of electric vehicles into other uses, and how that can increase the useful life of that object, as opposed to it's in a car, it's running down its charge, it's not useful anymore. Well, no, we can redeploy it to another use, and that was interesting as well.
Yeah. Anton is saying there, talking about you should always ask about life cycle analysis. So EVs are really 1/100th or 1% of a fossil fuel car, correct, in terms of their utilization or their usage of raw materials, etc.
What's EPD? What's EPD? EPD is
I don't know, actually. I was wondering myself, so I just decided to ignore it and go for the LCA,
Anton,
which I didn't know.
Fair enough. Anton, if you can clarify EPD, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
The next story, and there's I was going to say there's two interesting stories I've linked to here about essentially drones, but there's actually a third story which I came across just before we came on air, which I'll mention in passing. So this is the first one. EHang, they're a Chinese, I shouldn't say drone company, because what they're making is these flying taxis that you can sit into, and it is a drone for all intents and purposes, except it's just a really big one that, like I say, you can sit in and it becomes a taxi, a flying taxi. So EHang have been around for quite a while now. We don't hear much about them here in Europe because they're Chinese and they don't operate much outside of China, apart from places like Dubai. And they go to various congresses as well. I saw them at MWC, Mobile World Congress, back 2 years ago or so. But they're now doing cold weather testing in Beijing. They've done amazing testing in typhoons as well. They did a test in a typhoon last year sometime. So, I mean, this stuff is really, really maturing really, really quickly, Chris.
It is, and it's... I had heard about EHang from some of the work they've done in Dubai, and it is fascinating because the some of the testing that they're doing in those different weather conditions and things like that, there's lots of things you can simulate, and with the increase in computing power, those simulations become better, which means you actually do you can test the edge cases. Or it comes to the point where you test the edge cases physically and the normal use cases in simulations, and then you can test a subset of that. But it's really, really cool.
It is,
it is phenomenal. So it is absolutely phenomenal that the 10,000 flights, and all the data from that, all the telemetry data, and it all matches and things, and you just think, wow, this is not that far away.
It's incredible. And I mean, EHang are, nowhere near the only people in this space. We've got, Lilium out of Germany, Airbus with their Vahana, all the big players are in there. And we see
Who was United paired with? We had United the other week. Who did they pair with?
Was it Job? No, it wasn't Joby.
No. Yeah. I'll dig back through the links. I'll dig into the links and see if I can find it.
It'll come to me. Boa Data Portugal is from Anna there. Anna, hi Anna, how are you doing? And Anton came back with the EPD is Environmental Product Declaration. It's an ISO 14025. So that's pretty cool. But as I said, they're are far from being the only one in the space, because we saw Joby Aviation are going to IPO. And they're doing it through a SPAC, so kind of a reverse merger, a SPAC deal, which will value them at about 6.6 billion, I think, if I remember correctly from the article. And it's, let's see, Joby are the ones who have been heavily invested in by Toyota, and also I think they bought out Uber's Uber Air division when Uber started selling off its excess baggage at the start of this year or the end of last year.
One way of putting it.
So and the I mentioned there was a third one. This is it's a bit tongue in cheek. The third drone-related story that I saw came out. I just saw it this afternoon, and it's a DJI story. And DJI are this Chinese drone company, and they make I shouldn't say toy drones, but drones for hobbyists. My own one here beside me, is a DJI drone, for example. So they make small ones for people to play with. Hobbyist drones maybe is a better way of putting it. They have a new one out called the DJI FPV. So FPV standing for first person view. So they sell the drone with a 150 degree camera, 150 degree, 60 frames per second, 4K HD, and they set a fully immersive set of goggles and a handheld controller, and you are basically looking out the front of the drone that you're flying. I mean, not exactly tech for good, but tech for a lot of fun.
Oh, that is just brilliant. Can you imagine the drone racing? Have you ever watched drone racing?
Yeah.
That is just nuts. And if you could do that, oh, wow.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Google it after the show, Chris, because on the DJI FPV page, they have a video there, and it's stunning stuff. It really, really is. So check it out after the show.
Okay, I will.
We'll move on. I'm getting distracted. Energy space again. Decarbonization of energy, the whole energy transition as it's known in the energy space. Again, lots of disruption happening here. And we're just talking about one today, and it is the fact that there's this story from Bangladesh. And I choose this not because it is regionally important. It's very important, but it's also indicative of a trend that's happening in the region, because I've seen headlines like this several times over the last number of weeks, months, and even longer, where plans, and you often hear people saying, oh, there's another 427 coal-fired power plants planned to be built in Southeast Asia in the next 5 years. And you go, yeah, how many of those will actually come to fruition though? Because every single week, essentially, I'm coming across headlines about these ones that had been planned and now the governments are shutting them down. This time, it's in Bangladesh. 9 coal-fired plants that were due to be built are being shut, are never going to see the light of day. The plans are being shelved. Exactly. And you're seeing things like that in China as well, hugely. And actually, going back to the previous story, Anton says, drones, not only for fun, they're useful for saving lives as well. And that's true. I've done a couple of stories on ways drones have been used to save lives. And I saw a story for this week's one that I considered putting in. It was from the New York Times about a drone company in the US that are using drones to disinfect seats in baseball stadiums. So flies over the seats, sprays them with disinfectant, and I considered putting it in, but I decided not to put it in, A, because I had enough stories already, but B, because it's outdoor, you've got social distancing, it's possible, but I think it's that in that scenario, it's more about security theater type thing. It's more about making people feel good about doing something than actually doing good. Naresh says hi. Hey Naresh, how you doing? Good to see you, man. Where are you calling in from? We'll keep going.
What was interesting about this one? What I found interesting about this one is you spoke briefly about that this follows a trend in this sort of region of the planet, especially with China, and it's actually interesting because the coal-fired stations themselves, I think, were leased to Chinese companies. So it is a bit of both. When you read down through it, it seems to be a bit of both the Chinese economics and the money, as well as the Bangladeshi government as well, and the focus on liquid LNG, natural gas, and renewables to replace those.
Even the focus
on fuel sources.
Even the focus on LNG is a short-term solution because
it is, and they do say that.
For the same reasons coal is going out, LNG will go out as well. Just it'll take a little longer.
Exactly. But it was the thing that struck me in the article was the direct relationship between the pollution of the power plants and the health problems in the region are called out specifically in the article.
Yeah.
And that is language you do not see particularly often. You hear about economics and things like that and commitment to climate. You do not see
it's
typically
more and more.
that. Yeah.
People are becoming more aware of it, and it's phenomenal. It's really great. The other interesting thing in that region is in China. Last year, they shut down their imports of coal from Australia. And that has caused problems for the Chinese in terms of their coal plants shutting down due to lack of coal. But it's also causing massive problems for Australia because their income from selling coal is dropping, and it's going to continue dropping because India have said they're not going to import any more coal from Australia either. So hello Australia, writing on the wall much? We'll move on. We came across some phenomenal stories in the health sector this week. Some really, really great ones. I think we got 4 stories out of health. And the first one was heavily reported on yesterday in lots of different publications and today as well. And it's data out of the UK where they're saying that the Oxford AstraZeneca and the Pfizer vaccines, a single dose of them is able to cut the risk of serious illness by 80% in people over 80. And there's a lot more detail in it. But basically, what they're saying is that the vaccines, the AstraZeneca vaccine in particular, I say in particular for that one because people have been saying that that's less effective. But actually, a single jab of it, according to this, is extremely effective in at least preventing death and serious illness. So, let's all go out there and grab some jab.
Exactly. And this is the thing. It's something that if it reduces the severity of an infection, then it means that people don't have to go to hospital. Exactly. And that reduces pressure on the health systems within the countries, and it hopefully would reduce things like long COVID and that sort of thing. So there are many facets to this. I'm not going to say this fight or this battle, but to this situation that need to be dealt with, and that's pretty impressive.
It is. It really is. And as I say, as you dig into that data, it becomes even more impressive. It's a really fascinating story. And then in the same kind of space, Moderna have announced that they're now shipping for trials for new clinical studies variant-specific vaccine candidates, or one in particular for the South African variant of COVID. So they've identified ways now of producing vaccines that are specific per COVID variant, or at least that can hit on those COVID variants. So that's phenomenal news as well, because particularly I think the South African one was resistant to some of the other vaccines, so having one that's good for that as well. Eventually we're going to get one, I think, which is good for everything, but we're still at very early days in this.
So this is fascinating because that story came out 24th February, 2021, and the South African variant was actually was declared on the 18th of September 2020. So that is 2 months, just over 2 months to from detection through to candidate specific or candidate for variant specific vaccine. That is phenomenal.
Amazing. And Peter has joined us. He said he got no notification, so cheers for coming along, Peter, despite the lack of notification. Good on you. And I have someone coming up here as a LinkedIn user. It doesn't come through. Doesn't come through Restream for some reason. That I think that's a privacy setting, so I'm not sure who I'm talking to. First time viewer, but thank you for joining us. And apparently he or she knows you, Chris, or at least is.
I think so.
Says it's great to see you in full
I'll check
flow.
it on the live stream and see.
It's not the missus, is it? You have her in the other room there logging on.
No, definitely not. She is quite safely ensconced in the Royal.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
Next story from the health space. Oh, look, Peter's told us already. It's Daniel Fearon is the LinkedIn user.
Oh, yes. An old, very, very old friend of mine. Like, I knew Daniel going back to when we were 8. So that's
wow.
well over 3 decades. Good to see you, Dan.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then we came across this story, and this one I think everyone has kind of mixed feelings about this. The EU is proposing vaccine passports in time for summer, and so the idea is, I guess, in the article they say specifically it is to allow for summer vacation travel and also for travel for work, and you know that's great, and I don't know, I really have, as I say, mixed feelings about this. I mean, on the one hand, I would like, if I go to a bar or a restaurant or a nightclub, I would like to be sure that everyone who's in there is vaccinated. So if bars and restaurants started putting, restrictions saying you can only enter if you can prove you've been vaccinated, I wouldn't think that's a bad thing. On the other hand, I can see that that's for people who have been, for whatever reason, unable to get the vaccine, because I'm not going to get the vaccine until, the rate is being rolled out here in Spain. It'll be late September at the earliest if I'm lucky. But that's okay. I'm happy to sit and wait my turn and let all the people who deserve to get there ahead of me get it. I don't know. What's your thinking on this, Chris?
We run the risk of creating a 2-tier system, and that's never ever a good thing. There are practicalities, data sharing between jurisdictions. How do you prove it? How do you get it? Where's the data stored? There are just so many logistical challenges with this. And one of the things that we've seen throughout this entire thing is that, our countries are still not brilliant at working together on something that is as important as getting through this pandemic. And so I think, yes, there is an argument for it, but unfortunately there are no good and no easy answers as to how to do it.
Well,
and
I'll give you another perspective, Chris. I know that the school that my kids are in,
yes,
I know that one of the teachers there has voiced reluctance to getting the vaccine. My older son will turn 18 in a couple of weeks, so he will be eligible for the vaccine, so that's fine. But my younger son is 14, and he's not eligible for a vaccine because they're not vaccinating under 18s yet.
Yes.
So if this teacher doesn't get the vaccine, decides not to get it, there's no way I want him in a classroom with my kid.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And these are very difficult questions, I think.
They are difficult questions, and it is serious because it's something that has life-changing consequences for either for the person who has it or who doesn't have the vaccine, and it can it really is so difficult to be fair about it, because it is a very emotive issue, and I would agree with you in the fact that it's I haven't seen or I haven't had any person-to-person contact with anybody outside my family for for coming up on a year now.
Likewise.
And I'm a hugger, and it is extremely hard. But that's, I have nearly in every bubble within my family there is a health compromised person, and I'm not willing to take that chance. And when it comes to people interacting with my family, I expect something similar. So, on the one hand, the father, the family person says yes. On the other hand, the realist and the person who respects other people says it's not as black and white as that.
Exactly.
But that's part of the challenge. It's just a pity that, especially in the UK, we have a bunch of elected muppets who find it difficult to think in those terms. I would feel much better about this sort of stuff if I could actually trust the people who were actually making decisions not to be muppets.
Yeah.
And be considered about something.
Peter's saying in the comments there that he was asked to, when H1N1 was a thing, he had to get the vaccine years ago for a trip to Singapore. And, it's not unprecedented in that respect. I mean, there are countries in South America, in Africa. If you're going there, you have to prove that you've been vaccinated for yellow fever, for example, and things like that. So, there is precedent for this. And there's even a technological standard for those kinds of passports, which could be extended for coronavirus. So we'll have to see. There's a comment as well from Claire, which I didn't quite get. I don't know if
yes, yes.
I'm not sure what Claire is talking about. I know what DNRs do not resuscitate, but Claire, if you want to come back and clarify what you mean by that, it went over my head. Lucy was saying that she used to work for a group that made drones to help save lives in dark roads and at sea. There's all kinds of fantastic ways that drones are able to help people in collapsed buildings, in all kinds of things like that. They're able to use them seismologically now as well.
I wonder if that was Direct Line, the insurance group, or just, I know Direct Line is an umbrella of companies, so it'd be interesting to see which part of Direct Line that was.
And Peter was asking, was that a Bailey's on ice? I'm afraid not. It's a coffee. Although I don't wish it was Bailey's. I don't like Bailey's. My tipple of choice, Peter, is beer. So if you see a beer coming in, then very definitely it's for me. Otherwise, it's either water or coffee. Those are my drinks of choice.
Depends what time it is, though, Tom. I do remember doing a Tech for Good.
Go on.
You're shaking your head. Do you remember walking back from a Tech Ed in Las Vegas? It was the Thursday night party, and we did Tech for Good in Nigel James's hotel room in the Palazzo.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember much of the Tech for Good, but I think we left the club. We left the bar at about 3 a.m, and we had to get up at 8 a.m.
That's right.
And you didn't have a guest, and I foolishly said, if I'm awake at 7:45, I will come down and do it. And the alarm went off at 7:45, and I rolled over, and the world didn't end. It deserved to, but it didn't end. So I know I made you a promise, so I went down and we did it together. But yes, it depends. Beer earlier, but I have strong recollections of other alcohol.
That was before the show, though. That was before the show. And no, I tend, when I'm out, I tend to stick to just beer. I do. I'm pretty good on that. I don't like strong drinks. I don't like. If I have something stronger than beer, it might be a G&T, but that's very rarely, because if I have a couple of them, I just fall over. I just fall asleep.
Well, you had the crutch. That's why.
That's
you didn't fall over.
That was propped up. So Naresh in the comment asked, was there any report of a side effect to the vaccine? And Peter has dropped him a comment with vaccine safety from the Canadian government. What I'll say as well, Naresh, is the advice from the Spanish government here is, before you go to get your vaccine, to take a paracetamol, and a couple of hours after the vaccine, take another, because I presume it's the Pfizer one that they're rolling out here. They say it can cause you a pain in your arm. So that's the main side effect. You can have an ache in your arm. Anton is saying,
a couple of interesting comments.
50 years there are no marking passports about other diseases, AIDS. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say how you feel.
Timo is saying, here in France, schools are fully open. Yeah, they're not quite fully open here, Timo. So my older son is going to school every day. My younger son is going to school every second day. So it's 2 days 1 week, 3 days another. But it's with windows and doors open with masks. So they go with KN95 masks on or FFP2 masks and fully sterilizing or disinfecting the desks and everything. And they've introduced all school testing. Interesting. Okay, the fast tests a few weeks ago and saliva test today. 6 p.m. curfew. Okay. Seems like interesting measures there in France. The real Muppets are the people that can't follow the basic rules. Yeah, I know. Oh, dear God, you're so right.
Yeah.
Oh, and you see it all the time. I mean, yeah. Anyway, kids with disabilities are more likely to die with COVID or be hospitalized, and the government decided DNR for disability patients. Wow.
I don't know where that is.
I don't know where that is, Claire. Yeah, that must be in somewhere that's really heavily hit. And Timo's offering to drink the Baileys. Oh, that's nice. Timo, just slip me a beer. Love me a good Guinness or Scotch. Yeah, I'd stick with the Guinness. Although here I'm more likely to drink Cruz Campo. It's called. It's the local beer here. It's from Seville. Yes. And Anton is saying he remembers my liking the Russian vodka. Yeah, I didn't drink a lot of it though, Anton. I didn't drink a lot of it, you'll remember, and I drank it to be sociable, but when you left the hotel, Anton, and I went to the bar, I ordered a beer for myself, not a vodka, so...
Yeah.
Beer is my tipple. Next story, we'll move on, because this one is incredible as well. And this is a new vaccine being tested to immunize against malaria. And this kind of... This is huge because malaria kills about 400,000 people a year and infects millions of people a year, mostly in the likes of sub-Saharan Africa. And it has massive economic impacts. And it's never been possible to successfully vaccinate against it in the past. There is a vaccine out there now, but it's like 30% effective or something, and the effectiveness wears off after a couple of years. So it's a waste of time essentially. But this new one is looking very promising. It's only been tested on mice so far, but it's using a new type of RNA technology. It's not using mRNA, which is messenger RNA. It's using saRNA, propagating. It's not propagating, but it's something along those lines.
I'm trying to find it. Keep talking and I'll
basically
find
it means it can make itself. So we'll call it
self-replicating. It's self-replicating, that's what it is.
Yeah, self-replicating RNA. So it's using self-replicating RNA, which it says is more effective, a lot more effective, because just a couple of liters batch is enough to vaccinate hundreds of thousands or millions of people, because it's heavily dilutable, so and apparently it's incredibly effective. So this could be huge, and it's building on the mRNA technology that has come to the fore for COVID. So, the advances we're seeing in healthcare off the back of this pandemic, are really impressive. It's one of those things where you have this enormous crisis, which affects everybody, but it kicks innovation into high gear, and we get massive long-term benefits for it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be insensitive to the horrific things that are happening in a lot of hospitals and to a lot of families, but there is an upside to it as well, every cloud and silver linings and all that.
Yeah, it's fascinating because this one, it triggers the production of the protein that that malaria has that malaria has that causes problems, and that's still not right. But anyway, it produces the malarial protein, and that's what actually sets the immune system going. And so the immune system learns itself how to actually to combat it, which is that's class. That is just brilliant. So it is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, no. But they've given it to Oxford University.
That's
so
right.
They have the work's gone to Oxford. So again, that's that in itself is pretty good.
They've received a patent for it, but it looks like they've licensed that patent to Oxford to produce it. So that's fantastic. It should be, rolled out in big numbers. Claire saying that DNR thing was from the UK. Sorry to hear that, Claire. And they were the same happened in North America, according to Peter, when the beds were overflowing. I guess, when in times of crisis, it's a form of triage, I guess, which is horrible, and nobody wants to do that. Timo's asking, did we already cover this article? We didn't, is the short answer, Timo, before I even get to the end of the sentence. We didn't cover it, I'll tell you that right now, which explains mRNA by making the analogy with software code. It certainly helped me understand the power of it. I haven't seen the article, Timo, but I'll bat you one back. There's also a fantastic analogy explaining mRNA on the XKCD cartoon site.
Yes,
and it references the Death Star and Star Wars. So, boom! Sorry, Timo, you lose. This one wins.
Well, I'm going to actually stick it on the in the comments in the chat. I'll stick it in the chat. So because it's hilarious.
It's really good. It's really good. Sorry, Timo. I haven't read the link you put in there. I will check it out afterwards. Thanks for that. But if you haven't seen it, Timo, check out the XKCD cartoon because it's really good, and it's right on message as well, talking about messenger RNA and explaining how it works. Peter saying Clark Middleton, who appeared in the Blacklist and Showtime's Twin Peaks, died. He was 63, died from West Nile virus, which he got in October. Wow, okay, sorry to hear that. Anton is saying that good answer, past stamp, etc. Better not to close borders with quarantine. Okay, not sure there. We'll move on. Miscellaneous. We're coming towards the end. We've 2 stories left and then a final plug at the end. So second last story, and this was superb. This is a new form of making concrete which is bendable. So it's not as brittle as typical concrete. It's CO2 infused. And it's stronger than traditional concrete. So stronger and bendable means you need to put less rebar into it, less iron or steel into it. So just the creation of the steel has a huge carbon footprint. So having to put less in reduces the CO2 implications of concrete. And concrete was responsible for about 7% of global emissions. So that's way more than the transport industry, for example. And it isn't easy to mitigate the carbon emissions of concrete. So this is one of the better solutions I've seen so far. And one of the guys, the lead researcher of this, his name is Professor Volker Sick from University of Michigan. He is going to be a guest on my Climate 21 podcast in the coming weeks, and this is one of the things we'll be talking about. We'll go in some more detail. Yeah. What did you think of this one, Chris?
I thought this one was fascinating. It seems really weird, actually. Concrete's one of those things that I find a little bit interesting because just the history of it and how long it's actually been around and the various ways concrete has been created over the years. When you look, the Romans, for example, the Romans used to actually use they used to put ash and blood into the concrete, into the cement mixture, because the blood would oxidize and actually cure from the inside out, which is one of the reasons why you still see Roman concrete structures still around and being still quite secure. So
cool. I did not know that.
It's quite interesting. So, but it is a horrible pollutant. And when you consider how much countries like China use, what was it? It was a couple of years ago. China poured more concrete in 1 year than the US used in a decade, and things like that. And when you see those types of statistics and you see it as a percentage of one thing as a percentage of global carbon emissions, anything that brings that down is
good.
Important.
Yeah,
it is important. And yeah, it is pretty cool. But the thing about it is that it needs to sit in alongside the other things that we work with. We had a story last week about a wind turbine that, granted, wind turbines traditionally use steel, but that was made out of wood.
Yeah.
There are other things, but it is important to see them start, or not even start, but continue to evolve existing building materials.
Yeah. And Anton is back in there in the comments again saying that it's generally needed to lower the weight of construction materials, and he spent 10 years working for a Russian construction company. So aerated concrete company. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Last story, and I thought this one was cool as well. Very different from any of the things we've covered before, but also really interesting. And it's how Google are able to use their massive web of cables, undersea cables, to detect earthquakes. And this is the first time this has been done, but it's hugely important because these cables are already in place. So you don't have to deploy sensors out, in the oceans, which is not a cheap thing to do. These cables are already in place, and without adding any extra infrastructure, just by analyzing the light coming through the cables, which is coming through the cables anyway, just for looking for shifts in the light, you can detect things like earthquakes and even tsunamis. And because it's traveling at the speed of light, you get the fact that there's a tsunami coming within milliseconds of the tsunami being kicked off. So you get a warning out much, much, much earlier. I remember where there was an earthquake a few years ago in, I want to say it was California. It probably was California, given most of America's earthquakes seem to happen in California. But I remember seeing a Twitter map, or seeing a map of tweets.
Yes.
Saying earthquake. And it was
wow.
These were geolocated tweets, and you just saw them rippling out from the epicenter of the earthquake. It was an amazing, amazing visualization, but obviously they travel at the speed of earthquake shock wave, which is, I don't know what it is, but it's slower than the speed of sound, definitely. So
it depends on the type of wave. It depends on the type of wave.
On the medium it's going through as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, speed of light is orders of magnitude faster by definition. Oh, yes. So, just being able to use that existing infrastructure, the stuff that's already in place that we're using today, just to get messages around the world, for this as well, extra functionality built into something that's already out there. I think that's pretty amazing. Yep. Dogs are going ballistic. We're obviously getting a delivery. 1 second, I'll go and mute you. Take over there, Chris, for a sec.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where you're using something for one thing, and then you find a way to use it for something else, and it's effectively a second order effect. And when you start to look at this stuff, and let's face it, I really wouldn't. Google is one of those companies because ultimately it is a data company. So it is. It's a yes, its business model is based on advertising, and that's how it generates its revenue. But ultimately, it is one of the best data companies in the world, and this sort of thing. I don't know whether it was Google actually found it. I know that it was geophysics at CIT, California Institute of Technology, but whether Google actually found it and then went to them, I didn't read down through the whole article.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but it is just phenomenal because and this is one of the things I couldn't quite understand, because when you actually look at the data itself, or what's actually being sent through the cable, it's not a continuous data stream. It's not a contiguous data stream. It's all packets which has to be reassembled and things like that. So that they actually find it in the error correction that needed to be done, or did they actually find it in the detectors itself, this noise of when the cables were moving and things like that. And that's something that I need to actually dig into a little bit more. But I just thought this is really cool.
It is
finding more signal in the data, or finding new use cases in the data that you'd never thought of before. It's just phenomenal.
It is really fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's to your point,
Into the Inferno.
Oh, new comment. Oh yeah,
yes, new comment.
Watch a good movie, Into the Inferno, about volcanoes on Netflix. Okay.
I'll stick that in the thing. But yes, sorry, Tom.
Yeah, no. Timo's just jumped in with another comment. I wonder if this also helps automatically detect when various national spy agencies try to splice into the cable.
Here, never mind national spy agencies. There's enough money to be made. I reckon that actual other companies would splice into them at landfall and things like that.
I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked either way, frankly. I'd say they're heavily hacked into already, although Google would probably deny that. So finally, that was the last story. We've got one final plug. It's a repeat of last week's plug, because I'm hosting a live stream tomorrow, March 3rd, for anyone who's joining tomorrow or days after. So I'm hosting a live stream on March 3rd. It's part of the Design to Operate live stream series here on LinkedIn Live. If you're watching on LinkedIn Live, it'll be at the usual time of 5 p.m. Europe, 4 p.m. Ireland, UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. It'll be on the topic of manufacturing as a critical part of a resilient, sustainable supply chain. I'll be chatting with Michael Lackey, who heads up digital manufacturing for SAP. These Design to Operate live streams on LinkedIn that are happening every second Wednesday have been a major success. The one I did 2 weeks ago with David Vallejo, in the week after it had happened, it had over, I think, 3,000 views and 146 comments. So major live interaction. The amount of comments that are happening. I when I'm prepping for these, I tell the guests to come with about 20 minutes worth of content, and when we get to the top of the hour after speaking for 60 minutes, we're okay. We got to stop taking questions now. It's coming to the top. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. The engagement is incredible. So, go on.
Well, no, it is absolutely fantastic. When I look at what we used to do on YouTube and what we're doing now, even if you take, we got a comment about the what was it, the EPD and the Environment Product Declaration, and we asked for a clarification and we got an answer.
Straight away.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And Naresh is saying there that this is his area of interest. Well, cool, Naresh. Join us tomorrow, and I guarantee you'll enjoy it. It's good stuff. Mike, if you haven't come across Mike Lackey, you've done a couple of podcasts with him, so you could check those out. I did one with them about 2-3 weeks ago on the Digital Supply Chain podcast. So if you're interested, Naresh, check out the Digital Supply Chain podcast for the episode with Michael Lackey, listen to that, and then get a few questions ready for the live stream tomorrow and throw them into the comments tomorrow during the live stream, and we'll answer them for you. So there, and not just Naresh, anyone else as well. I've done podcasts with Mike, or if you have questions of your own unrelated to the podcast, bring those as well. The engagement on these live streams is off the charts. It's really impressive, and we have great fun doing it. We really do. We totally enjoy it. Same as Chris and myself here today. So I think that's it, Chris.
I think so, yes.
We finished a couple of minutes early. We've got 5 minutes left. That's just as well. My next call, Chris. my next call in 5 minutes time now is with a woman called Rebecca Moses, and I'll be recording a podcast with her for the Climate 21 series, for the My Climate 21 podcast. She's a senior exec with Impossible Foods, so that's going to be an exceptional, really interesting podcast.
Yes, I've eaten their stuff actually. I'm just trying to think. What it was the burger. It was their Impossible
Probably
Foods
the Impossible Burger. Yeah,
it's the Impossible Burger.
I haven't tried the Impossible Burger. I tried Beyond Meat's burgers. I've tried them, but I haven't. They don't sell the Impossible ones here. So, yes, I'll be interviewing Rebecca in a few minutes for the Climate 21 podcast. And last week's episode of the Climate 21 podcast was with a guy called Mark Korzelius, who's the founder and CSO of one of the largest indoor vertical farms in the world. So that was a really cool one as well.
Where is that vertical farm?
Sorry?
Where is that vertical farm? Because they're Indonesia and Singapore are phenomenal with them. So they are.
So the one, this guy Mark Korzelius, he's founder of a company called And Ever. That's ampersand and the word ever. And they have the big one they have is in Kuwait. In the desert in Kuwait, and they're building an even bigger one now in Singapore, and then they're building super small ones in Germany specifically, and super small by their definition of super small ones for hotels and grocery stores, large grocery outlets in Germany. The one in Kuwait is producing about 500 kilos of greens per day.
Jeez, that's nice.
They get 18 crops a year from the different varieties they do from a single year. And Timo saying he tried the Beyond Burger. Yeah, me too, Timo. I bought them. The one of the very first days of the pandemic lockdown here in Spain. It was when we could just go for groceries. I went to the grocery store. Everything was gone from the meat counter, except a lonely packet of Beyond Meat burgers. So I got them and tried them, and I actually liked them, so it was great. I'd happily give it up as well. So anyway, we gotta call a halt, folks. Cheers, everyone. Thanks a million, everyone, for your interest, your comments, the whole thing. We shall see you all same time, same channel next week. Cheerio.
Cheers.